The other day I did a video about the top cable channel, Fox News. And even when you combine CNN and MSNBC, Fox News has just about 100,000 more viewers in primetime. Now, as long as I've known, growing up, Fox News, I've been told, is fake news. Among liberals on the left, Fox News is considered to be absolutely not credible, just fake, nonsense garbage. And I think the reason for that is their opinion primetime hosts. Bill O'Reilly made some pretty ridiculous statements. The most famous, one of the most famous being, sun goes up, what did he say? Tide goes in, tide goes out, you can't explain that. Sun goes up, sun comes down, you can't explain that. Much to the shock of many people because, as it was explained, we did explain that 500 years ago. But people will confuse the primetime opinion voices with Fox News' actual reporting. And it's also not fair, too, because I'll only mention Shepard Smith, but he actually does a really good job, in my opinion. I do believe that they have some hosts whose opinions are just overly tribal and partisan. Now, the right typically says that CNN is fake news, and obviously MSNBC is fake news. And like I mentioned, combined, their viewership is still a little bit less than Fox, so I think it's fair to kind of lump them together. But you've got people on the right saying CNN is fake news. At Trump rallies, they were flicking off Jim Acosta and things to that effect. So naturally, both sides disagree on what real news is. Fortunately, we have a news service called Newsguard, which is making the rounds. I believe it launched possibly in March. But as you can see on the screen here, we have the official rating from Newsguard, foxnews.com. This website generally maintains basic standards of accuracy and accountability. The website of Fox News Channel, the most watched cable and satellite news channel in the United States, created by Rupert Murdoch as a conservative counterpoint to the three major broadcast networks and CNN. And they do have a bit more information, which I will, oh, that's the wrong website, but I will pull that up in just a second. I'll probably have to pull up Fox News. But the reason this is so large on the screen is because there are mainstream journalists and left-wing individuals who are angry about this. Naturally, I assure you, when I show you CNN, you're going to see how the right will be angry as well because CNN is also rated as credible. Now, Newsguard's really, really interesting. They've given ratings to a lot of sites, and I would say I'm rather surprised at the ratings given to many sites. For instance, the Daily Caller is rated as credible and reliable, and I know a lot of people view them as kind of clickbaity, hyper-partisan. They may be, and I would say that I find that Newsguard is actually really, really lenient. Newsguard takes into account that many sites are hyper-partisan and skew in a certain direction, and I feel like they're fair about it. Now, I think they obviously will have their bias. The individuals have their biases, or biases, however you pronounce it. But I do think that after reading through it, I was a little bit peeved at some of the websites being given credibility ratings. But then I looked at some of their counterpoints on the left and the right, and I said, I think they're just being kind of lenient on a lot of what these websites do. So if the Daily Wire, the Daily Caller, and certain sites are going to get deemed credible, I wouldn't be surprised to see the counterpoints, Huffington Post or like Mike.com being deemed credible as well. Because the important thing is, are they fact-checking, correcting, and avoiding certain practices regardless of their opinion? And a lot of these sites are just overly biased in one direction with heavy opinion that I think crosses the line. But Newsguard is fair. And so Fox News is, given this good rating. And this article that I've pulled up is from Nieman Lab, right? So this is, Nieman Lab is the foundation at Harvard. It deals with journalism. And what's interesting here is I think what's interesting about this article from Nieman Lab is that it needed to be written in the first place, because I don't see Nieman Lab writing, Newsguard considers CNN a healthy part of your news diet. And I wonder why. Look, if you're going to have Fox News getting more viewership than CNN and MSNBC, I think you have to write about CNN too, at least. When I see them writing about Fox News, it says to me that the establishment, those who are establishment journalists, and a lot of people who are, I guess, just prominent writers, view Fox News as fake and are left-leaning. And we know that's true. I don't have the sources pulled up with me, but yes, journalists tend to be liberal and not conservative. So naturally, they say Fox News is fake news. So they say some would agree, others would disagree, but that's the challenge of creating a simple green-red label for a news site. You've got to have a cutoff line somewhere, and for Newsguard, it's somewhere south of Fox News. Absolutely. And look, I don't, if I was going to make a news rating system, I wouldn't be so harsh as to say, I'd probably do like green, yellow, red, maybe, like be cautious about this. And I would put all the hyper-partisan sites into yellow. But I would actually put Fox News and CNN in green as general partisan. And look, there's going to be a lot of people who disagree. They're going to say Fox News is fake news. That's ridiculous. They're going to say CNN is fake news. It's ridiculous. But I think the real issue is the bias. Okay, so if you watch CNN, they inundate you with anti-Trump, everything nonstop. And I kind of facepalm at just how often they do it. But just because they only report on one thing and it's skewed in favor of a certain perspective doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It just means that it's hyper-partisan, which is why, maybe not even necessarily hyper-partisan, but they're clearly going for a certain audience. But I guess the reason I would rate them personally as green and not yellow or red or anything like that, like you can watch them, is that while I find their opinion and commentary to be just downright awful, Fox News and CNN, and I don't mean awful and like wrong, I just really don't like the hyper-partisan opinion stuff. CNN.com as a website, FoxNews.com as a website, it's good. It's good. I got to say, and a lot of people might disagree, but we'll look at this story. So as soon as Newsguard, the Steve Brill, Gordon Grovitz startup that aims to rate every significant news and news site as reliable or not, was first announced, the question began, what will it say about Fox News? And I got to point out why. Why is Nieman Lab saying, what will it say about Fox News? What will it say about CNN or MSNBC? Certainly, I think CNN is more credible than MSNBC to an extreme degree, right? Like, seriously. But I do think CNN has fallen off of their CNN used to be a lot better. And in the past decade or so, it's just fallen into kind of, Don Lemon's black hole thing. I'm not going to get into that. But we have this freaking Einstein right here. They highlight this. And you notice a little blue wave, right? So you can tell their political leaning. He says, I love the idea of Newsguard rating real and fake news sites to empower readers with information to decide for themselves where they get their real news. I'm also curious how Fox News will rate. Someone else said, will they include Fox News? That alone would keep them busy. Newsguard, new venture to combat fake news. No, it wouldn't. It's actually really simple. Fox News was given a good rating. And what's interesting, I'm going to skip through these tweets because I don't think they're particularly relevant, but they said, as our own Ken Doctor put it in March, writing about green for good, red for bad color system the company uses, Newsguard could be a simple, elegant solution to both the honest hand-wringing and the overwrought blather about fake news, but we still have to ask the question that Newsguard won't answer until it has to. What color is Fox News? You see how they just repeatedly beat this in? When there are establishment voices associated with Harvard saying Fox News is the fake one, but not CNN, you can tell that there is an establishment bent opposed to conservatism or to the right. And what's fascinating, and honestly, one of the reasons Newsguard doesn't fit my personal bias. I've looked at some of the websites they've rated and I scoff. Like, how could they rate that? But you know what? When I look at how they rate Fox News versus, CNN and MSNBC, I go, okay. I mean, they're getting flack for this. They're getting flack for saying that Fox News is a healthy part of your news diet, and that's really interesting to me. So they mention, according to Newsguard, conservative Daily Caller, Daily Wire, and liberal Second Nexus and Politicus USA are actually trustworthy, partisan, biased, and sometimes don't differentiate opinion and fact-based reporting, but they're not lying to you, is I suppose what they're saying. But they do say Palmer Report, Political Insider, Hannity, Gateway Pundit, Breitbart, Daily Mail, 100% fed up, Bipartisan Report, ShareBlue, Daily Kos, and it does seem like there are more right-wing sites that are labeled as with caution. Honestly, I'm not surprised to see Breitbart there. I don't use Breitbart as a source and because there have been points where I've pulled up their stories and I can see it myself. I can see that it's just really heavy opinion drilling into that story that makes me, Gateway Pundit, I can't speak for as a whole because I don't read a whole lot of it, but I can say that there have been some stories, the stories that I've read mostly from Cassandra Fairbanks, who, full disclosure, is a friend of mine, I have found to be rather fair. Not all of them, I can't speak to the entirety of her work, but I'm actually rather impressed because Cassandra is absolutely pro-Trump partisan, and I have seen her write articles where I'm like, oh, well, she could have gone a little bit more, skewed in favor of her side on that one. But I can't speak for them as a whole. But then seeing ShareBlue and Daily Kos, yeah, and Bipartisan Report. Absolutely agree, right? I absolutely agree with that, hands down. And so here's what's interesting. This is the official rating for Fox News. They say they don't regularly correct or clarify errors. They get an X on that. They don't disclose ownership and financing, and they don't reveal who's in charge. What's curious here is they say that Newsguard dings Fox News on 3 of the 9 factors on which it rates news sites, saying it has issues with regularly correcting its errors, disclosing its ownership and financing, and revealing who's in charge, including any possible conflicts of interest. On the other 6 factors, not publishing false content repeatedly, gathering and publishing information responsibly, avoiding deceptive headlines, differentiating news and opinion responsibly, clearly labeling advertising and providing information about reporters, Fox News passes. So what they mention that it's kind of confusing because it seems like the reason they're giving Fox News dings is because their about page is insufficient. I mean, look, to an extent, we don't know who's in charge and potential conflicts of interest, but we know it's a News Corp company owned by 21st Century Fox. So do I agree with this? I don't know. Maybe not. Do they disclose ownership and financing? I guess technically on the website they don't, but most people know who owns Fox News. So I want to, so we can look at some of this. We've got this tweet here from a woman, Susan Glass. I'm not sure who she is, but it says, this is the Fox News homepage right now, seriously. And she tweeted, this is when it came out that Cohen and Manafort were convicted, and the front page of Fox News was talking about the Molly Tibbetts murder. And a lot of people on the left were flabbergasted that Fox News wasn't talking about Cohen. I wasn't in the least, because people who support Donald Trump view this as kind of not that big of a story. I've looked at some of the threads and some of the Trump supporters' conversations about it, and they view that it doesn't necessarily prove Trump did anything wrong. Sure, is it interesting? Should it be reported on? Sure. But they're much more concerned about what happened with Molly Tibbetts. So naturally, Fox News, being a conservative site, is going to focus on issues that conservatives care about. It's, I don't think it's unfair for Fox News to have their front and center story be a specific angle when they are a conservative website. It just, look, if you go to the front page of Fox News and that's a story you see, why are you getting mad? You can read many, many more news websites simply because they're reporting on something specific. But here's what some of the interesting commentary we've seen. Dan Gilmore, a high-profile he said, a high-profile new initiative, Newsguard rating, which rates whether news organizations are reliable and honest, gives a thumbs up to Fox News, and he puts news in quotes, thereby disqualifying itself from being a source you can trust for such ratings. And that's absolutely what's crazy to me. So Stephen Brill, the co-founder, said, why not read the rating before you tweet, then tell us what you think we got wrong? Isn't that what a serious scholar, as rightly respected as you are, would do before commenting rather than just having an instant reaction? We unflinchingly applied our 9 criteria. And then he signs it, Steve Brill. So let's take this is the Newsguard website. I actually installed the extension, and it gives you a little exclamation point or check mark if they think it's good or bad. I'm not going to read through Steve Brill's. Look, Steve Brill is an author and founder of Court TV, American Lawyer Magazine, American Lawyer Media, Brill's Content Magazine, Journalism Online, and the Yale Journalism Initiative. And I was trying to figure out whether I should trust their ratings or not, but I'm not going to go based off of their resumes or CVs. I'm going to look at how they rate various websites and see if they have a bias against conservative sites or not. And it does seem like they do to an extent, but are still willing to give credibility ratings to right-wing sites. So here we have Daily Caller, which is considered to be a green check mark. This is good. And it says that they don't handle the difference between news and opinion responsibly, they don't avoid deceptive headlines, and they don't disclose ownership, but they don't publish fake news, they gather and present facts responsibly, and they do correct their errors. Then we have The Atlantic. They don't disclose ownership and financing, but they do for these criteria, and The Atlantic is way more mainstream. And then we have BuzzFeed, which gets green check marks across the board. And I gotta say, I might not agree that BuzzFeed deserves green check marks across the board, but I do find BuzzFeed news to be, to an extent, reliable. The issue with a lot of fake news is simply that it's presented from a bias. It's biased, towards the left or the right, and that's why I don't like using them for the most part. When I use a left-wing source for a story, it's typically because the story skews in their favor to some effect, right? If there's a story that is critical of someone on the left, and it's coming from a left-wing source, I'd much prefer to use that source to avoid any accusations of bias. If there's a story about Obama, and I use Breitbart, people are going to say, oh, well, he's using Breitbart. But if there's a negative story about Antifa and Vox reported, which they did, then you can't really accuse me of seeking out biased sources because I'm literally using Vox, which tends to be on the left. And if they're going to be critical, then, so that's why I try to, skew in that direction. And that's what I'll use BuzzFeed for, because they do have a bias. Newsguard, in my opinion, I've looked at this, they do show the liberal and conservative bias, and they will flat out say so. And I think that they are being fair, but they're like I mentioned very early on, they're very lenient. So I want to end with the core point of this video. Fox News, the #1 cable news channel and very, very prominent website, is considered credible by Newsguard. CNN is as well. And what I think is important to take away from all of you is that Trump supporters and the right will say CNN is fake news and MSNBC, and the left will say Fox News is fake news. Mostly because they skew in favor of one of the two sides. And I think that's what you really should pay attention to. So ultimately, I would say Newsguard does a pretty damn good job. I'm not as big, I'm not gonna say, rely on it for everything. It's interesting that they have this chart of 9 criteria, but it's not as hands-on and it's not as in-depth as some of these other services that are coming out. So it's interesting to see. I guess the last thing I'll end up with, I'll reiterate on before I end this video is, look, the left thinks Fox News is as fake as the right thinks CNN is fake, and it's that simple. When I go to foxnews.com and I read their stories, it's baffling to me how the left and many establishment figures, I mean, the fact that Nieman Lab had to write an article about questioning why Fox News is considered, a legitimate source is proof, in my opinion, that the establishment skews left, period, because they're not writing about why CNN is fake news. And CNN has a ton of really dumb comments and really awful reporting. I'll give you an example. I was on the ground in Ferguson getting tear gassed, and Don Lemon, a block away, reported live there was no tear gas, and you could see the tear gas behind him. This stuff happens. So I think if I was going to be fair, I'd say, look, I don't watch Fox News. I don't watch CNN for their commentary. I have absolutely no problem watching Fox News when they're covering actual news. And like I said, I think Shep Smith is actually really great. I'm really impressed. He's seems like a really good dude. And CNN, I personally do like Anderson Cooper. I think he's a good dude as well. They're not perfect. They're not 100. They don't get a 10 out of 10. I give them like a 6 out of 10, both of them. But I think they do what they can. And I think anybody watching this, whatever your bias is, take a look at Newsguard and take a look at how they rate these things. And I think it's just really important to realize we're divided in this country. And the left hates Fox and the right hates CNN and MSNBC. And that's all you can say. I don't know what to say to someone on the left to try and convince them that you can look, Fox News has accurate information. Don't listen to the crazy opinion guys, on TV. Look at their actual reporting. It's not bad. Even in the day-to-day stuff on the Fox News channel. And the same thing I would say to the people on the right. Yes, obviously the primetime stuff is going to be Trump bump attempting to go after the president to get those ratings. But you can look at their standard reporting, and I actually use it in my sourcing because I find it to be fairly accurate. And now there's going to be a bunch of people angry saying Fox News is fake and CNN is fake, but it is what it is. So stick around. I'm going to have another video up today at 4 p.m. And I'm hoping that I can carry on with this 2 videos main channel thing per day. We'll see what happens. I don't have the stamina of a world-class athlete, but maybe I can make it work. So follow me on Twitter at Timcast. You can check out the video I have up at 4, but I also have videos on my second channel every day, youtube.com/TimCastNews. And subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you guys later today at 4.